Hi, and welcome back to this week's Parsha Shir on Sefer or Gedalyahu. As I mentioned last week, the way that our year of Torah readings is structured, we always read Parshas Kisavo 2 weeks before Rosh Hashanah, so that there is a little bit of a buffer zone between the reading of the Klalos in the Tocha and the celebration of the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, with the hope that Tichle Shana Vekiloseh, that the previous year, with all of its distress and all of its difficulties, will be ended, and that with a little bit of a break and a buffer in between, we'll be able to start the new year afresh and anew, Techel Shana Uvirchoseh, that the new year will begin with all of its blessings, with all of its brachos. Because of that structure, there is always a week in between where we get to read the parsha either of Nitzavim or of Nitzavim Vayelech. And so it's so beautiful, actually, that there are many tie-ins in the very simple reading of Parshas Nitzavim to the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, making it a particularly appropriate parsha to read on the eve of this important holiday. And the Gedalyahu addresses himself to this connection between some of the themes and lessons of Parshas Nitzavim and the implications they have upon us as we think about ourselves and our responsibilities vis-a-vis the holiday of Rosh Hashanah that is coming upon us. He says, "V'kevan shebeparsha zo kvar margishim es ha'ara shel Rosh Hashanah." I love the language that he uses here. Even in this parsha, as we read the words, you already feel the sparks, you feel the lights, you feel the ha'ara, the or that is coming down from Rosh Hashanah and spilling over into us through the words of this parsha. It's like the rays of the sun that you see off in the distance that are peeking through the clouds. That's how we see Rosh Hashanah is already in our grasp through the light that comes through in the psukim of this parsha. We see Rosh Hashanah already, the glimpses of it, the hints of it in this parsha. And because of that, he says, Yesh lefarish es hapsukim hamedabrim be'inyan habris shenasa im klal Yisrael le'inyan hayom shel Rosh Hashanah. We have to interpret the words of the covenant that is being made with the Jewish people in this parsha in light of the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, in the spirit of Rosh Hashanah on our minds. K'mo sheneva'er. HaPasuk Barosh Parsha, the first pasuk in our parsha, Mones b'nei Yisrael derech klal v'derech prat. It enumerates the Jewish people both as individuals and as a collective. Very famously, pasuk says, Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem lifnei Hashem Elokechem. You are all standing before God today. That's a collective statement. Then the pasuk continues to say, Achar kach moneh hapratim. Then it enumerates individual categories of people that are standing before God. Roshechem, Shiftechem, Ziknechem, V'Shotrichem, Kol Ish Yisrael. Every individual Jew is standing. Every sort. From the Shotrim, to the Shoftim, to the Shvatim, to the Tapchem, Nishechem, Gerchasher, Bekarav Machanecha, Chotevet Sechad, Shoev Memecha, the wood choppers, and the water carriers, and the children, and the women, and the men, and the heads, and the ministers, and the officers, everything. Everybody, Kol Ish Yisrael, every individual with their unique roles are standing before God. So everyone wonders, why does the pasuk enumerate individuals if it already said, Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem, you're all standing as one collective before God? And the interpretation, as everyone alludes to, as the Gedalyahu is saying here, is that we stand before God in Rosh Hashanah both as individuals and as a collective. And the reason for that, the reason why the parsha focuses on that is Ki Rosh Hashanah nidorim b'Toras klal. On Rosh Hashanah, we not only stand before God as individuals and as a collective, but the reason we do that is because we are being judged in that moment and in that season as individuals and as a collective. Kedita b'Mishnah, just like it says in the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, it talks about the different times when the world is judged. And the Mishnah tells us, on Rosh Hashanah, the world is also judged, and in that moment, Kol bai olam ovrim lefanav kivnei maron. And in that moment, the entire world passes before God like sheep. The Gemara interprets later on what exactly kivnei maron means. Either it means literally like sheep. When sheep are counted by their shepherd as they're coming into the pen, they're counted as individuals. Every single sheep is counted as the staff goes upon them. We say in the Tana Tokef, Kivakarat roe edro, ma'avir tzono tachat shifto, that it's like the shepherd who is gathering in the flock. Every sheep that is coming back into the pen after a long day out in the field has to be counted, has to pass underneath the staff of the shepherd. So too we pass before God one at a time, one by one by one, viewed as individuals. The other interpretations the Gemara gives is like Chayalos Beis David, like the soldiers of the army of David HaMelech, who had to go single file, again, one at a time, or Kaolias B'nei Beis Maron. So, like when you go up to the place of Meron, the mountaintop of Meron, there's a very thin path, B'nei Maron, and on that path, there's only room for one individual at a time, single file. All of the interpretations mean the same thing. We come before God as individuals, Kivnei Maron. Ulahalan b'Gemara, but later on in the very same Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, the Gemara tells us Kulam niskarim b'skira achas, that we're all viewed in one fell swoop, that we're all examined as one collective. Haprat v'haklal kulam ovrim lefanav. Atem nitzavim hayom lifnei Hashem Elokechem kolchem haklal v'gam hapratim kol ish Yisrael. The pasuk is pointing out to us what the Gemara is pointing out to us, which is the reality of Rosh Hashanah. The reality of all year is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at every one of us as individuals, examining our deeds, examining our ways, examining our behaviors and our perspectives and our actions, but also looking upon the totality of a community, the totality of the Jewish people, the totality of the world as one unit, where every individual is subsumed into the broader perspective of that group, so that if the Jewish people as a whole are doing really well, we're judged in terms of the totality of our behavior. Every individual might not be behaving perfectly, but you are judged in terms of your connection to that collective who is doing well, or vice versa, God forbid. And in addition to being viewed as part of that collective, your individual deeds are scrutinized as well. Now, we don't understand the full balance of how God takes those both into account. Our judgment as part of the collective and our judgment as an individual, we don't understand that. Of course, we don't fully understand the ways of Hashem, but we trust that Hashem takes both into consideration, our individuality and our sense of identity that we have as part of the collective. There's another implication of this first pasuk of the parsha singling us out as individuals and casting us as part of the collective. And that is not only from the perspective of God, who is examining our deeds and judging us, but also from the side of our own behavior, from the perspective we are supposed to take on our responsibilities and our life. He says, Yesh lomar, shemahalech haparsha, hu she'af sheyesh bris im ha'am b'toras klal. The whole mahalech, the whole sequence of this parsha, talking about the covenant that we are entering into with God, is speaking about the covenant that we enter into as a collective, like the pasuk says, "L'man hakim oscha hayom lo la'am." The whole purpose of this is to establish you as a nation. You're coming into this covenant with me as a collective. But in that context, lo yomar hayachid she'ein ha'achrayu shel habris va'ala b'miuchad alav. A person can't ignore that the responsibility of the warnings of the parsha and of the covenant of the parsha apply to the individual as well. They're not only to the collective. And that's what the Torah warns against. When the Torah says, "V'haya b'shamo es divrei ha'ala hazos," when you hear the words of this rebuke, of this lesson, and you say to yourself, all will be well with me. I'll go whatever way I want. I'll go in whatever pathway I want, regardless of the directives, regardless of the warnings, regardless of the klal. I am a yachid. I am an individual. I will do as I please and as I want. That's the warning of the parsha, not to do that. The Torah understands that as we come into the bris, the covenant as a collective, we could easily run the risk of thinking that we don't have a role as an individual. The Torah says, no, don't think that way. As much as you're part of the collective, you're also viewed and judged and should view yourself as an individual with a responsibility. And he points to an interesting phenomenon that we see amongst human beings in various circles, and certainly when it comes to Torah and when it comes to mitzvah. He says, Dahainu, sheyesh teva b'bnei adam. There's a nature and a natural tendency amongst human beings, sheritzonam dafka lagur b'makom Torah, that they particularly want to live in a place of Torah, in a place with strong Torah values, Torah behaviors, Torah learning, strong Jewish infrastructure. But the individual who wants to live in that collective doesn't see themselves as particularly responsible for leading an upstanding Torah life. That a person has this, and it seems like it's a bit of a strange oxymoron almost, that why would a person want to live in a strong Torah community if they themselves don't want to behave that way? But if you think about it, it's part of the makeup of a human being that sometimes certain types of people run the tendency, perhaps all of us at various points in our life, run the risk or have the tendency to say, well, I feel really good about everything going on around me in the collective. I feel great about the fact that there's strong Torah institutions and Torah learning and shuls and schools, and if I don't particularly participate, I'm kind of off the hook. The ability to subsume yourself within the collective sometimes gives you the out to say, I'm off the hook. Doesn't matter so much how I behave as an individual, because everybody else is doing it. Everybody else is raising me up. And to a certain degree, what the Gedalyahu is saying is that is true. That is what the Parsha is telling us. We're part of a collective because we are viewed and subsumed as part of that collective. And that collective helps to raise us up, even if our own practices are not perfect. But despite the fact that that is a reality, you can't use that as an excuse to let yourself off the hook. I sometimes have heard in my past and other communities that I've been in, people bragging about the community that they live in. They say, oh, I go to this wonderful shul. I heard someone from the 5 towns once tell me that I go to a shul and we have 10 minyanim for Shachris and for Mincha Marav. And I looked at the person and I didn't say it, but what I was thinking to myself is, it's very nice that you're boasting about all the minyanim your shul has, but you're not at the minyan. You don't go to the minyan. Why are you so proud of it? And I realize it's this phenomenon. A person can be made to feel so good because everything they're a part of in the collective that it lets them off the hook as an individual. As opposed to sometimes when you're not part of a strong collective, you feel more of a responsibility to act as a yachid, to act as an individual, to strengthen your own observance in your own Torah because you don't feel elevated by the tzibur. So the goal, of course, is to feel elevated by the tzibur, but not to use the elevation of the tzibur as an excuse to back away and to step down as an individual. He says the same exists in yeshiva. He says there are people who want to go to yeshiva that have makpidim al hastarim, that are very careful. All the students are very diligent and are coming on time and learning carefully and not wasting any time, but they themselves don't act with such care and concern about their own time and their own siddharim. It's the same phenomenon. A person wants to be part of that collective. Sometimes it gives them the out, gives them an excuse to be able to back away. But that's a dangerous thing. And it's something we should shy away from. Because as he says, Kol klal banui mihitztarful shel yechidim, that every collective is built upon the backs of individuals. If we ourselves don't strengthen our own individual practices, then the whole collective falls apart. You should always see yourself as an individual who's part of a collective, but an individual has a unique and important role to play as an individual within that collective, as a strong individual within that collective. He reads the warning of this particular kind of perspective actually into the pasuk that we just read. The end of the pasuk says that if you do go your own way and you say to yourself, Ki bishrurus le Vayelech, I don't care what the collective is doing, I'm going off on my own, I'm doing my own thing. The pasuk ends and says what's going to happen is Leman sefos harava es hatzmeya. It's a very hard pasuk to read. Leman, thereby, sefos, unclear what that means. Either it means to add to or to supplant. Harava es hatzmeya, the filled one or the watered down one. Es hatzmeya, the thirsty one. So Rashi says here, his own perspective. The Ramban actually has a very interesting perspective on this pasuk. He says, "Laman sefos haravat hatzmiya." It means that if you go off in your own direction, say, "I'm doing what I want. I don't care what my responsibilities are," then what you're going to do is supplant sefos harava es hatzmiya. You're going to supplant the satiated one with the thirsty one. What does that mean? It means a person is generally kind of satisfied. They're not interested in doing too many averos and following their own desires and their own proclivities. They're fine. But once you start, and once you break that barrier and you do it once and you do it twice, then you have this intense thirst and desire. It snowballs, and you want to do it more, and you want to do it more. But if you keep going off on your own, violating the principles of your responsibility, sefos haravas hatzmiah, then the filled one, the satiated one, will be replaced by a thirsty one who always wants more of the wrong stuff. But the Or Gedalyahu says it means something else as well. Leman sefos haravas hatzmiah, that the Rava is the filled one. What is the filled one? The filled one represents the collective, filled with many, many individuals. The tzmeah, the thirsty one, is the one that's a little emptier. The emptier one is the individual. You don't want to replace the individual with the collective. You don't want to replace the one that is, you don't want to replace the individual with the collective or the collective with the individual. You don't want to say, well, I'm part of a collective, I don't need to act as an individual. And you also don't want to say, I'm an individual who's doing well, what do I need a collective for? You need the fusion and the union of both, so hopefully be elevated by the community and contribute back in a positive cycle of reinforcement that goes from the individual to the collective and back to the individual, and enabling ourselves to all be viewed, to be judged, to be scrutinized around Rosh Hashanah and every point of the year with all the positives of the community we are part of, the collective we're part of, and all the positives of our own individual behavior. Shabbat Shalom.